Today I'm going to talk about the perfect beater work car. In this case, it's a 2004 Toyota Corolla that a customer of mine just bought for that very purpose for $1,500. Now, as you can see, the hubcaps are gone. We go inside. The cover for the lock's gone. It still works, but the cover's gone. And we get inside. Not all that worse for wear. Normally these are all torn up. There's only dented a little. And the back seats aren't in that bad shape, really. Now, as you can see here, the weather stripping is ripped. And these are all gouged. People obviously have been breaking into the car using those jimmies to open it up. Some either locked themselves in or tried stealing the car. But what makes it the perfect beater work car is under the hood. And yes, the prop that holds the hood open is gone, so we use this piece of plastic tube in here. Nice and strong. But these 4-cylinder Toyota engines can last forever. As can the automatic transmission in this 2004. It's really not all that different from the transmission in my old Celica. It's got 230 some odd thousand miles on it. They're very dependable vehicles. I'm sure the emblem's all worn out, but hey, this thing's only got 122,690 miles. That's not much for a Corolla. Now, there's no saying how many owners this 16-year-old Corolla has. Since they're so reliable, you don't have to worry about buying just a one-owner one like with some other cars. These things can just go and go. Now, in the case of this Corolla, customer just bought it. He wants me to tune it up and give it an overall checkup. So the first thing we're going to do is pop out the spark plugs. That'll give us a really good idea what kind of shape the engine is in. This stupid beauty cover doesn't serve any real purpose. Then we'll pop out the spark plugs. Loosen all the nuts that hold the coil on plugs in. Take them out one at a time. Then we'll take out the spark plugs. No one knows what kind of shape this thing's going to be until we take it apart. And out it comes. As we analyze it, we can see they're tan colored, which is what you want. There's a little bit of oil burning residue, which is typical on a worn engine. We're going to change them out, but they're the right color. The engine's firing good. It just burns a little oil, which you can expect on an older engine. And of course, you're going to check the air filter. Pop it out. It's really dirty, as you can see. It needs an air filter too. So the first thing I'm going to do is get new spark plugs and an air filter. Now, when I scanned it with the computer, it had a code for small evap leaks, so I'm going to change the gas cap too. It could easily have a leaking gas cap. So we'll pop the gas cap, open it up, take off the old one, and put the new one on. Makes a nice click. And the old one's got a torn gasket, so that makes sense. Now, normally you put spark plugs in dry, but I'm using some of this all-in-one oil. And I'm going to lubricate the threads a little bit here, because if you remember, when we tried to get it out, you could hear it was really tight. This one we want a little lube, because we don't want to ruin the aluminum heads. If they're a little bit corroded and you put them in, you can have problems. So in this case, we don't normally do it, but on this, I'm putting a little oil on the threads. So then when we put them in our magnetic socket that holds it in, when it goes in, it's going to go in smoother. You can see I can even do it by hand most of the way. Then we'll get it snug with a ratchet. And as we do the other three, we're going to inspect those plugs too. And here's number 2. It looks the same as number 1. It's the right color. Got a little bit of oil burning on it, but like I say, that's normal for an engine like this, with this kind of mileage. And here goes number 3. Wiggle it a little to get it out. This one's stuck. This one's going to require a little prying. So I get out the giant screwdriver, put it under the lip, and wow, that one's really stuck. There we go. Finally it came off. Let's hope it doesn't have any problems inside. Out it comes. It looks the same as the other ones, but you can see the top, the rubber kind of melted on goo from the years these plugs were in there. Sometimes they'll stick like that. Just keep wiggling and prying, you'll get them off. Then we put this one back in with a new plug, and then do the last one, number 4. And we'll inspect this. And it's also the same. It's the right color. It's got a little bit of oil burning, nothing outrageous. They've been in there a long time, so we'll put the last plug in. Then we'll stick all the coil assemblies back on. Don't forget the hold-on bolts for each one of them. And we'll put the stupid beauty cover back on. Not that it does anything. And of course, pop the new air filter in. Gotta wiggle it quite a bit. Then it snaps on. Now, due to age and probably lack of proper maintenance, the oil seals on the front of the engine are leaking a little bit of oil. But rather than tear the whole engine apart on this beater car, I'm going to stick some of this AT205 reseal. It can rejuvenate rubber seals. You just pour it in the engine oil. Take off the cap, pour the whole bottle in, and it goes. Then we start her up and warm it up. And while I'm warming up, I noticed the coolant's a little low, so I'll use some of this pink Toyota coolant, because realize, when you buy a beater car, it's the type of car you check the oil every so often, the coolant. You just make checks of stuff, because it's going to leak a little oil. it's obviously using a little bit of coolant. You just keep topping that stuff up. Being a Corolla, it can still last for years and years if you keep up with the fluids. And now we'll take it for a spin. Hey, it accelerates pretty good for one of these Corollas. Now you notice the airbag light is on. Heck, the airbags on these things, who knows how many times this thing's been wrecked. And yeah, the ride's a little bouncy when you hit bumps because the struts are worn, but hey, it gets you down the road. It's a good work car for 1,500 bucks. Could last for years. And yeah, if you hit the brakes hard at higher speeds, the steering wheel shakes a little because the rotors are somewhat warped, but what the heck, it still stops the car. You can put new rotors and pads on if you want, but I doubt if this guy's gonna even care. Because he's going to college now, and he got himself a good college beater car. And look, the power door locks still work. You can't beat this 99 Mercury Grand Marquis. Now, a customer of mine just bought this thing from the original little old lady owner, and it's only got 55,000 miles on it. Look, it still looks as sharp as it did the day it was made. Now we check on the hood. It's got the big, old, dependable V8 engine. This particular one's a 4.6, extremely strong engine. Big engine, you'd think it'd be a big gas hog, but these things really weren't. This thing gets about 17 in town, and it gets a whopping 28 on the highway because the way they're set up, the RPMs are pretty low when you're going 60 miles an hour. It's set up for cruising. You could drive these things all day long. And check the inside. Still in immaculate shape, and it's got semi-bucket seats. It's not the old bench seats like they had when I was a kid. No, the back's a little more couchy, but you can see, man, there's some serious legroom in this thing. And this one's unique because it's got the digital dash. It's still working perfectly fine, too. Of course, it has power, everything. Radio's got a lot of set buttons on it for something this old, 1999. It's pretty well set up. And look, the wood dash is still in good shape. Tons of headroom for you big people. Look, I still got a whole bunch of room before my head hits it. Check out the back seat. A lot of leg room in these things. Close the door. Nice solid door too. Hey, there's a lot of room inside this thing. It is not small. And of course the trunk, it is gigantic. It just goes and goes and goes. And check out the original wheels. 21 years old. Man, they're still shining. Look at that. It's amazing. Let's just say they don't make them like they used to. I see modern cars, they're 3 years old, and the alloy wheels are already pitting. They made things well back in the day. And if you do need to fix things, look at the working room. You never see that anymore. The AC is still blowing ice cold. The power steering's still working. The ABS is still working. They did start to put beauty covers on these things. I don't know why they bothered, but you know, even back in 99. Now with this overbuilt engine and a solid transmission, these things can basically run forever if you take care of them. But this one will start her up. Starts right up. It's only got 55,000 miles on it. Check it out. This baby isn't even broken in yet. See these things with 300,000 miles on it. But it's a 21-year-old car that's only got 55,000 miles on it. Even the rear defroster still works. And check out the digital readout. Not something you need a science degree to operate. Look, you want to check the things, you just push a button and it goes to the different ones. You don't have to think, oh, which button do I push? Then what do I do? Simple to use. As you can see here, I just turned the overdrive off. With the overdrive turned on, he's getting in the high 20s on the highway in this thing. And realize it's a classic rear wheel drive car. They handle the best. People that are real serious about driving, they almost always want rear wheel drive car. There's a reason race cars are rear wheel drive. They just handle better. This thing is a classic rear wheel drive. I've seen the differential still working fine, even with 300,000 miles on it. Pretty much, you take care of it with normal oil changes and regular maintenance, they can last forever. So let's start it up. Starts right up. Take it for a little spin. Now realize, they are kind of like land yachts. When you drive them, you more or less point and sail. They are a cushy ride, but you know, they're not tight handling. It's an old design. And with that big old V8 engine, I'll wait till these people are out of the way so I don't scare them. You punch it, it gets up and goes. And the ride, hey, it's smooth. Even though it's 21 years old. You hit bumps, all this weight absorbs most of the bumps. And it's not that sloppy when you're cornering. And strangely enough, my customer is a teenager. This is his first car. So, you know, it goes from the old generation to the young generation. And there's a lot of people buying these things now. A lot of younger guys are souping them up. Some of them turn them into low riders. It's a giant platform. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, odds are you're not going to find too many 21-year-old ones that only have 55,000 miles on it from the original owner. But there are a lot of elderly people that buy these, the Crown Vics. A lot of them don't drive that much anymore. Luckily, had good control. The car's not full of dings. I get quite a few of them come over here that they're still running good, but man, they got a lot of bashes in them from running into stuff in parking lots. But this one's whistle clean. Hard finding one with that kind of low mileage. But even if it had 100,000 miles on it, I've seen these things go over 300,000 miles. You just pay less money, that's all. But if you find a cherry one like this, somebody's asking $5 grand, odds are it's going to sell for $5 grand. Don't try to argue them down real far and then the next guy comes in with $5 grand and buys it from under you. So really, if you're looking for a family cruiser, or you're like my customer, a teenager just likes old big American cars, you really can't go wrong with one of these. Can you get a car that actually runs good and makes a great work car for $400? This guy seemed to have done it. And yes, it's missing a few side molding, and the bottom of the bumper here is held on with a zip tie. And the seller didn't tell him until he got there that, well, the interior was kind of gutted, but really, that makes for carrying things a lot easier. You can put all kinds of stuff in here. Here's the perspective from the back. There's a lot of space in there now. But hey, all 4 doors still work. And sure, the paint's faded away a little, but it is a Honda. Here we go. This guy owns a lot of Hondas. Starts right up. And sure, the airbag system doesn't work anymore, but the seat belts do, and they work perfectly fine. Now this thing does have 377,832 miles on it, but listen to the engine. It's just humming along. These Honda engines. Honda really is probably the best mass production company for engines in the world. All that mileage, is it clanging and clacking? No, it isn't. The only noise you really heard was the cold air intake, because when you put them on, it will make a car noisier. That's why a lot of guys do it. It will make more sound that way. The box in most cars, the air box, is also to keep cars quiet. Most people want quiet cars, but with these Hondas, a lot of guys soup them up. Now, granted, this battery came from another car. He paid $125 for that entire car, and this battery came in it. So he put this in his driving car. That's one of the big advantages of Hondas. You got choice of so many parts. There are so many interchangeable things you can get. You can always go to a salvage yard and you can have fun and don't have to spend much money. If you remember the video I made a few weeks ago on a Mazda Miata, he bought the Miata in a junkyard, but it had ugly wheels. So what did he put on it? He put beautiful Honda alloy wheels on it, which the guy in the junkyard gave him because he was buying the car. So not only do Honda parts fit Hondas, they fit some other cars too. Now how can these things last so long? Well, you know how? Check out the sticker. Made in Japan by Honda Motor Company. And sure, back then, the Japanese, maybe they weren't so hot at painting cars as BMW the same year. Kind of a difference in the paint there. Now this little bitty engine may only have 102 horsepower and a whopping 98 pound-feet of torque. You rev them up in a light car like this, they're still fun to drive. Now of course, this is a work car. And as a work car, you're not going to be doing drag racing in it. You really don't care. It's going to get you where you're going. It's going to be ultra dependable, even with all this mileage on it, because it's a Honda. Now, back in the day when I was a young mechanic, people would say, I'm not buying one of them foreign cars. You can't get parts for them. Ha! Let's say the starter breaks on this. Well, one, it's a standard transmission, so you can push start it anyways if you have to. But you can go to any AutoZone. Odds are they'll have a starter sitting on the shelves to hand to you. They're not hard to get parts for. They don't cost much. This is like the ultimate $400 transportation car. Not just like, oh, it's a stopgap. I'll buy this. Maybe it'll last me a couple of months. This thing might last another 10 years. Who knows? And of course, if you want to go crazy, you could take the shell and you could soup it all up. You could do whatever you wanted. You could put another engine, a supercharger, and have a real sleeper car, because they're set up that if you change the suspension, a little bigger engine, it would be one screaming car. But in this case, it's a transportation car. This thing can run all over the place, and it still gets 40 miles a gallon if you want to drive on a highway. But just normal driving, you get 30, 32 miles a gallon in the thing. Hey, you can't argue with that. The owner just told me the best gas mileage he ever got, he was driving Texas to Tennessee. He was doing about 90 miles an hour, and he calculated it when he filled it up going back and forth that he got 42 miles a gallon going 90 miles an hour. They have these things really well built. There's no arguing that. I mean, let's face the facts. Would you buy a $400 car and drive it 90 miles an hour from Texas to Tennessee and back? Well, if it's a Honda, it obviously did it. Here's the proof. It's sitting right here. And you're certainly not going to attract the police's attention in this thing. It's not a red screaming or orange or yellow sports car. Let's take it for a spin. Starts right up. It even makes it up hills. Look at this. Now what shocks me is, even in the twisties, this thing still handles good. And it really doesn't ride all that bad. Listen to it go. All those miles, it's still got guts in it. Here it goes from a standing start. Not bad for a $400 car, is it? This is still a fun country driving car. Take it out, have a little fun. You can't beat it for $400. Okay, now comes the big question. Yes, it's a $400 car, but how long is a $400 car gonna last? He bought it for $400 3 years ago. And you just went for a ride in this thing. You hear how it still hums. Don't think it's, oh, well, you know, oh, it might last a couple weeks. Hey, sometimes when I rented a car in Boston at the airport to visit my son there, I had to pay $700 to rent a car for 5 days. This thing's gonna go for 3 years for $400. And has it broken down? Well, truthfully, it broke down once. The distributor stopped sending fire. It broke. It's typical on these. Oh, and it's such a hard job to change. Here's the distributor. You know, there's a bolt here, here, and here. That's it. What did the owner do? He went to an O'Reilly. It's an old car, right? Guess what? They had a brand new one in stock for about $165. He didn't even have to order it. You get a mass-produced car that's as well made as a Honda. They're still extremely dependable transportation. So there you have it, a $400 car. 3 years later, and yeah, it's got a few dings in it, but are you gonna worry about this thing when you take it to the Walmart parking lot? No, you aren't. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.